Okay, folks, it's Mike with your Rocky 3 Comeback Classics review. We're outside the beautiful Cinemark Theater. Had a really good time with Rocky 3. I'll tell you why, because this was the first Rocky that I recall seeing in the movie theater. And when I saw it way back when, it was with my cousin. And I won't go too into it, folks. I know you're not here for a personal tragedy. But basically me and my cousins did not always get along, and haven't talked to this individual in many years. But it was a nice memory of two young adolescents going to see fucking Rocky 3 on their own in the big bad movie theater, having a good time. And I popped for this one, meaning I appreciated it and I enjoyed it just as much, if not more, than when I was a small child. And this movie starts off Rocky 3. There might be some spoilers in this one, folks. So if you really haven't seen Rocky 3, go out and see it. But if you have seen it, or if you don't mind spoilers, here we go. The opening montage of this movie is great. It really gets you into this. It throws you right in the hot water. I think overall, this movie, Rocky 3, is probably 20 or 30 minutes shorter than Rocky 1 or 2 that were both right on the 2-hour mark. This one felt more like 90 or 100 minutes, maybe a solid 90 minutes, but really good pacing. The stirring song, Eye of the Tiger, is that from Frank Stallone or is that from someone else? Is that from Survivor or Eddie Money or whoever? But it's really a great song, Eye of the Tiger. And the opening, this is how film evolves and develops and stuff. Because we've established who Rocky is, we kind of have this pattern of the incumbent champion, the rich champion, whether it was Apollo Creed in Rocky 1 or here in Rocky 3, it's now Rocky himself, losing that eye of the tiger, that edge. So it's a simple thing, but no other movie had really tackled that until Rocky made it a simple thing, as far as I know. But it's a great opening montage. You see the Ring magazine, you see Sylvester Stallone on the Muppets. I'm sure that was footage of the real Sylvester Stallone on the Muppets that they co-opt for this movie in genius editing. It's really fucking good. And then you see, the one thing I've always kind of held against these movies, my favorite probably is Rocky 3 and Rocky 4, but one thing I've held against him is that Rocky gets to be a lot more intelligent and polished and slick in Rocky 3. Like suddenly his IQ goes up 50 points. He's a much more articulate guy. But I think there's the excuse or the justification is that as he's getting more money, as he's living more comfortable lifestyle, he is more comfortable in his own skin and he's more articulate. But his sense of humor has gone up. Some of the great moments of humor in these films that I forgot to mention last time are really the moments where Rocky and Mickey are waiting for their opponent, whether it's Apollo in the first two or Mr. T or Hulk Hogan in this one. Those humorous moments of trainer and boxer waiting for the opponent, I think is underrated moments in the Rocky series. There's a lot of kind of in-ring banter. Now, I don't know if that's a real thing. I've been ringside for a few fights as a member of the press, the media, but I don't know if the boxers really are that funny or if that's just a cinematic value that Rocky brings to it. Here's a little stat and fact. I don't want to forget this. Inside secret, I don't know if anyone else has ever discovered this. There's a scene, a transitional segue, where they go to the Rocky pseudo-retirement speech outside the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and he's got the Rocky statue, and they're presenting him the statue. And the transition to that scene is a drum. Is one of these high school or college band is there with their drum set. So we see the little fucking drumstick tapping on a drum, and the drum, it looks like in a scrolled pen, says Mr. T. So I don't know if anyone else has exposed that or discussed it. I'm guessing somewhere somebody has. But if you watch this movie carefully, Rocky fucking 3, and the transition to the retirement speech where Mr. T comes out and challenges him to a fight, blah, 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 you see this drum thing, and then you see the two words, Mr. period T. Now, you might be saying, well, gee whiz, of course, he fights Mr. T in the movie. No, he fights Clubber Lang, the character in the movie. He does not fight Mr. T. Mr. T plays Clubber Lang. So why on earth would someone have written the word Mr. T on the drum set? I don't know if that's been researched and analyzed and studied by other Rocky aficionados or not. I have no clue, but I've never noticed it before, but there it fucking is, folks. So I was keeping an eye on these things. What else? The Hulk Hogan fight, the wrestler versus boxer scenario, which I think was supposedly inspired by the Inoki Ali thing, although this one's much more entertaining. If you had bought a ticket to see this Hogan, or Thunderlips I should say, versus Rocky thing, you'd be highly entertained. They rule it a draw, I guess a 10-minute time limit draw, but it's very entertaining. You can see, and this is a point I want to make about Rocky 3. Rocky 3 was the first Rocky movie of the 1980s. And although the 1970s movies, Rocky 1 and 2 were more in the tradition of The Godfather, big, epic, sweeping character studies, I think the Rocky movies of the 80s, namely 3 and 4, were more fun for my fucking value. Like, once we've established the grittiness, the hardcore nature of Rocky Balboa and Adrian and everything, we can get into a little bit of glitz, a little bit of pop culture, and I think that really worked well for this series, this franchise, if you want to call it that. So I just dig Rocky 3 and 4 the most. I think that the slickness, the production values, you know, of course you needed Rocky 1 and 2 to get us there, to get us to the dance. But once you've established Rocky, I think he really just have more freedom. Now, that once again, the only critical thing, well, two critical things, is like I said, you know, his intelligence level. Rocky's intelligence goes up in value and not down, which is kind of interesting because he's getting more punches to the head. They even make jokes about that being punchy and so forth. What else? And I think fighters, boxers are very aware. I asked a friend of mine, Vinny Pazienza, a 50-win fighter, hey Vinny, you know, you fought 60 times, 30 knockout victories, 50 wins against only 10 defeats against some of the best in the world, Roy Jones Jr., Haugen, etc. I said, Vinny, do you feel that you've had any brain damage? And Vinny said, Mike, I don't know how I didn't, but I don't think I did. You know, so even my good friend Vinny Pazienza doesn't feel like he's suffered any brain damage, but it's a miracle that he hasn't, because he fought a very Rocky-esque style, you know, head fucking on. No Marciano references in Rocky 3. There was quite a bit in Rocky 1. What else? This movie maybe I like the best because there's actually 3 fights. If you include the Hogan fight, the spectacle fight, the, you know, Thunderlips fight, there's 3 fights 3 times in the ring in Rocky 3, which is maybe why I like that one the most. Looking forward to Rocky 4. There are people who are now converging onto these theaters. A gentleman approached me in this movie tonight, not in a curious way, I'll get to that in a minute, but just wondering if I had been seeing all the Rocky movies, and I said yes. So he's coming back for Rocky 4 tomorrow. We're all excited to see what happens. And I informed him that these movies only cost $5, the Comeback Classics. I encourage you to get your mask. I had my K95 mask and KN95, whatever the fuck mask, to enjoy the film. The other issue I had another issue, another problem, so to speak, or a statement situation with the Rocky movies. What the hell was it? The thing about Rocky being more intelligent. Boy, I don't want to lose the momentum on this thought, but it's kind of whispering in and out of my ear. Oh, I hear it. This is the big one. I probably should have saved this for first, or made it first. I think the great thing about the Rocky movies, as a series, there's a lot of repetition. They repeat the same thing. The champion gets lazy, whether it's Apollo or Rocky. The champion gets lazy and then he loses the eye of the tiger. And the montage where usually Rocky has to snap him out of himself of a shitty, you know, training session. This one is the first one, spoiler alert, where we kill off the trainer, Mickey, okay? And to me, it's a pony that they went to one too many times, meaning that, spoiler for Rocky 4, to kill off first Mickey and then Apollo for Rocky 4, I think that creatively it might have been a mistake in the long term, and I'll tell you why. All these years later, wouldn't it be great to have the Apollo Creed character in the Creed movies? Now, some people, if they aren't watching the Rocky and the Creed movies, are not realizing that Creed, the son of Creed, I believe it's Michael B. Jordan, is playing Creed's son, with Felicia Rashad taking over the role of Creed's mom. How come it just sucks that, you know, Carl Weathers is not involved in these films, because he's a great actor. And I'm talking about the Creed movies, jumping ahead 20 years. And I just feel that this, like Burgess Meredith, no offense to Burgess, but he had a great long run. And for him to have, you know, to put Mickey to rest, I think that's fine. But I think tactically, once we start killing off somebody every movie, because spoiler alert for Rocky Balboa, once we find out that Adrian's dead in Rocky Balboa, then we've done that 3 times. You know, we've killed off people left and right here. I can't remember off the top of my head in the Creed movies if they kill anybody. When I say kill, like a character has died, basically. I just don't like it, because I feel like it's a lot for the audience to get hooked into these characters, whether it's Mickey, Apollo, Adrian. I don't know why Adrian Talia Shriver didn't come back for the Rocky Balboa movies, if it was contract negotiations, if she wasn't up for it, if they didn't want her. I would have liked to have seen her in those movies. So I don't know the answer. If it's a technical issue, a creative choice. If it's a creative choice, I would argue against it, to be quite honest. I think there's a lot for these supporting characters, your ensemble. I can't remember if they killed off fucking Polly or not. I think they did, somewhere along the line. But I think it's a mistake. I think it's an error. I'll be man enough to say it. So I think this one, with Mickey, was a great death, a great cinematic death. And if you are going to kill off a main supporting character, kill him off on screen. Make it part of the drama, which they did. I think they might have gone to that well one too many times with Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed. I think in the long game, if they had fucking paralyzed him, if they had fucking put him in the hospital, put him in a concussion, it would have been great. You know, Rocky holding that fucking towel. I think they could have done that. They could have put fucking Apollo in a concussion and then had him open his fucking eyes at the end of Rocky 4, and he's watching the goddamn TV in his hospital bed, go Rock, or some bullshit. So I just don't think that it was a smart fucking move creatively. I'm watching these films, folks, in case you're wondering. I started to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I couldn't get fucking through it. I saw the first one. I don't understand the appeal of those films. I never read the books. I admit it. Okay, I'm not a Generation X fuck or whoever, or millennial fuck who has to read every book they're told to read, the fucking Hobbit. But I couldn't get into all these goddamn elves and fucking crap. And I think that was Liv Tyler in the Lord of the Rings, the first one, playing the fucking elf in whatever the fuck, which was nice. But beyond that, I'm just not into it. Does that make me a fucking asshole? But I'm just not into it. Moving forth, I don't know. It's fine. So I don't know if I agree creatively with the kill a character routine, is my point. If you want to disagree. It's freedom of choice when it comes to opinions. Mike Messier, the Michael McGlone interview here on the Mike Messier YouTube channel is getting rave reviews. Everyone that watches it loves it, says it's the greatest interview ever. Better than Cronkite interviewing Gaddafi or John F. Kennedy in his prime. So Mike Messier, Michael McGlone, the Double M interview on the Mike Messier celebrity playlist. People are gathering around me now to ask me questions about it. And more wonderful things. Don't forget Messier Mantra interview show, Messier Peace Theater 1 through 5, The Nature of the Flame, one of my better films. Disregard the Vampire, the Mike Messier documentary, The Impeccable, with the award-winning Nadia Zakarian and Ashley Shea and Adam Lem from Bays. Great actors I've worked with, and so forth. So it's Mike Messier with your Mike Messier Rocky 3 report. I'll be back with my Rocky 4 report. Feel free to leave comments, questions. The whole point of this series, folks, is to get you motivated to put on your little mask and go see a goddamn movie in the theater, whether it's Cinemark, Regal Cinemas, AMC, whatever's open in your local venue, even if you have to drive. Be worth it. Grab your mat. These theaters are very clean, and it's quite enjoyable to be back in the cinema. We have to fight through this fucking coronavirus and not get it. First of all, nobody wants to get it. But second of all, we can't let it cripple our lives We have to rise up like Rocky and Apollo on the beach. You got me curious, Rock.